It's June 1st, 1987, in the labor and delivery ward of a small hospital in Minnesota. Nurses rush around, tending to expectant mothers. And one mama in particular waits patiently in her bed for her time to deliver. For a young mother, she had already had so much difficulty along her path. She thought her partner was the one. It seemed so perfect at first, the way he looked at her, doted on her. So when they had a baby boy, who they named Davy, they were happy. Until tragedy struck. One day, her partner was supposed to be in charge of childcare, but got distracted. Davy was struck by a vehicle and killed. What was already a partnership that had started to sour turned into a full toxic relationship, and the two separated. But, as so often happens with these stories, life isn't perfect or linear, and emotions and the tug of our connections are strong. So the pair reconciled for a season, resulting in another pregnancy. And that brings us back to this hospital delivery ward and the waiting. And the awful truth that as this mother lay waiting for the onset of labor, her partner whispered to her one horrifying demand. It better be a boy. The young mother would try to temper him, to remind him gently, we can't replace Davy. But when the contractions came and she was finally told to push, she would find on the other side of that, her arms filled with a beautiful baby girl. And no partner. He left her in the hospital, alone. Mother and daughter shared a silent bond in that moment, a silent nod to one another, a promise of faith and resilience. And this little girl would receive both of those attributes and then some, though they'd find their way to the surface through tricky and circuitous routes. But when they did, they would give us one of the most beautifully prolific thought leaders of our day, Emily Ford.
Today we have the Emily Ford.
The incredible Emily Ford.
Emily Ford.
Emily Ford.
Emily Ford.
But before Emily became the Emily Ford we know today, she had to overcome some pretty tough challenges. But here's the thing. The flower that blooms in adversity is the most rare and beautiful of all. Pretty poignant, right? Okay, I can't claim I made it up. It's from the Walt Disney animated movie, Mulan.
The flower that blooms in adversity is the most rare and beautiful of all. Sir?
But the meaning behind this quote originally comes from the earliest blooming flower in China, the plum blossom. This beautiful tree does not wait for the warmth of spring to bloom. Instead, it blooms in the winter, even before the leaves of the tree are fully formed. Pushing through the snow and ice come beautiful flowers that have a strong, fragrant scent. And the colder it is, the more plum blossom blooms, flourishing, thriving, permeating the air with its sweet-smelling perfume. This is a beautiful description of Emily Ford. Her story today on the Gratitudology podcast.
Will you walk through the fire? Would you ride through the storm? Will you walk on a wire? Will you save me if I fall? Will you break through the madness? Set us down where we're safe. I'll be right here waiting till you find me again.
I think this is so important to talk about this because whenever I'm doing a new thing or where I'm at today, when it looks shiny and bright and beautiful, what's on my heart and what God puts on my heart is like, make sure that they know that they can too. like truly. And so it's really important to me that I do go here so people can know that they can break through.
I'm sitting down with Emily Ford in a podcast studio in Costa Mesa, California, near her home. When she walks in the door, she's radiant. Blonde hair flowing, glowing skin, and her outfit, a deep, rich brown blouse and pants set. It looks like luxe pajamas that got a glow up to become day wear. It is fabulous, all paired with a sensible kitten heel shoe. She comes in with a small entourage because this girl is one of the leading entrepreneurs, coaches, and keynote speakers in the country, in heavy demand for her expertise and motivation. But it wasn't always like this.
The day, June 1st, 87, I came into this world. It was like I came out clearly a girl. And that's the day that they just like split paths. And so my mom took full custody of us and got a tiny little house and tried to figure it out.
Emily's mom did her best as a young single mom, but times were tough. So when she linked up with a new boyfriend, Emily and her siblings were hopeful. That hope faded fast.
For over a decade, she had a boyfriend live with her that was physically and mentally abusive. So I grew up in a very like toxic environment. She was always loving and trying, but she was such a young mother who went through so much trauma. And so a lot of times growing up, you know, I didn't know if it was going to be like a bright day or if it was going to be like mom's screaming day. We had to like make stories up all the time. Like my brother was a really good baseball player and we had to make up a story because my mom had a black eye, and it was like, just say that they were playing catch and he hit mom, like just tell the neighbors that if anyone asks. Like there was always stories we had to tell.
Emily's brother loved baseball, and one night they were all excited to go as a family to a Minnesota Twins baseball game.
We would go like be way up in the nosebleeds because we didn't have a lot of money, but it was a really big deal that we went to the baseball game. It was such a big deal because you drive, like we're living in like farmland, so you drive to like the cities, the Twin Cities, like an hour drive. And it was such a highlight. We're driving home and it was my mom, her boyfriend, and us 3 kids in the back. And we were like sleeping because we were driving home from a late night game, and he had an episode where he just started lashing out, and like he was driving and he basically like he had this big ring that he would wear, and he like went like this and like hit my mom. I just remember her like just like blood everywhere, and like gosh, I think I was like 7 years old or something, and like just panicked because I had been sleeping, and it just was like turbulence, and they pulled to the side of the road, and it was like, what is going on? And who I really feel for is my brother, because my brother is 7 years older than me, and so he was like helpless, right? This young little man was like, what do I do? And what ended up happening is we were like a block away from the house, so he got out of the car and he told my mom just to drive home, and like left us. So us kids are like screaming in the back. My mom's like bleeding. He gets out of the car and he's like storming, and we're like, he's probably going to the bar because he had an alcohol problem. And so my mom drives us home, and we like are so frantic, and she's trying to like ice her face and whatever. And she's like trying to like get us ready for bed. And like, now that I'm older, I'm like, how did she even do this, right? She's putting on our little princess PJs and all the things and tucking us into our little mermaid sheets. And I don't know how much time passed, but he came back, and like he was like roaring, like fuming. And I just remember like hearing screams, like insanely loud screams. It was like my mom was just getting beat, and it was like horrible. Like, and my sister and I had bunk beds. We had this tiny little house, and he like ran in our bedroom And at that time, we had the the old-fashioned phones that used to plug into the wall, and he unplugged it so he couldn't call the cops. And I remember I was like, oh my God, is he gonna like touch me or something? You know, I had no idea. And I don't even remember like how the night ended. I just remember my sister, like I crawled up into my sister's bunk bed and like we just held each other and like cried. That was just one instance of what went on for a really long time.
Like many children in abusive households, Emily took on the responsibilities of helping keep the peace around the house and was often tasked with taking care of herself, something she feels made her stronger.
And so I grew up so fast, but by the grace of God, there was always like an angel over me, where whether it was teachers at school or coaches I had, like there was always angels looking out for me. You know, I ended up being my class president every year. I ended up playing junior Olympic volleyball. I ended up really good. I always say you can either go to the dark side or the light side. And for whatever reason, I ended up great. But I never healed from all the trauma and drama until later on in life, because I just didn't even know that I could talk about it. I didn't even know that like I should. I just masked it, and I just had this like kind of spirit of perfection because I just wanted to be seen and heard, and I just wanted to do my best, and I didn't want to ever ruffle feathers. And so that was how I grew up early on.
I had seen in a few podcasts that you said you would never share this part of your story in the beginning.
Right.
And like you weren't sure if it was a part that you should have forward facing.
Right.
And I say this all the time about making your mess your message, but only when you've healed.
Yes.
And I feel like this is a part of your healing, is the sharing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I completely agree with that statement. When it's like you're in the thick of it, like I was mentoring someone who's like in the middle of the divorce, and I was like, no, you're not training on this. Like, let's get, you got to build a bridge and get over it first.
Right.
And I think when there's a great deal of understanding, so I had to like uncover and go through that process of like, really what did happen, and is some of this delusional? Is it real? Is it, I went on this healing journey of like, what really did happen? And, you know, because you just have visions when you're young, and then what happens is you get into adulthood and you just mask everything, and then it manifests in different ways. It manifests in your body, in your health. It manifests in new relationships you have. You're like, why am I repeating this cycle and this pattern? And I looked to myself of like, what am I doing to repeat these patterns? And I went on this quest. And in that finding and healing and discovery, I realized like once I started to go on the other end of it, and yes, it's still wildly painful as I bring it up. It always will be. We're talking about my mom here, right? I just realized and I kind of got bothered of like how much this stuff is masked, and how much like when people say time heals all wounds, it's not true. Mm-hmm. Like what you deal with heals. Mm-hmm. And that's why I feel compelled to talk about it, because if we're really going to break generational curses and all these things, like we have to talk about it and stop living in shame. And so for me, I lived in shame for how I was raised. Even though I had no control over it, I felt shameful. And that made me really sad once I realized how much shame I had. And I realized there's freedom on the other side of that, and I don't have to live in that shame.
And by taking control of the narrative, you get to take the control back.
That's right.
And I think this is what, when I talk about gratitudeology, which is simply the study and practice of gratitude, and people confuse it with toxic positivity. When I say it's looking for the part where we can be grateful for. And some people are like, you know what? My trauma, I'm not grateful for it. I said, well, you don't have to be grateful for the trauma, but you can be grateful for the lessons.
Amen.
Right?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. And you're grateful for the angels, and you're grateful for what that representation was like. So who were some of those angels? What did that look like?
I think one of the angels was my brother who passed away. I really do believe that. One of the other angels was my next door neighbor who would come over and she would bring me clothes and braid my hair. I remember like the first time she did French braids and I thought they were the coolest thing ever. And she took me to this like non-denominational church where I just felt so much peace. And I had no idea why. And it was like there was just like a normalcy and there was kids playing.
Emily didn't know it yet, but this is around the time that her life would start to be shaped by faith. Back then, she just found going to this church fun.
It was just so fun. To be honest, I didn't really know how to play even when I was little because it's just like I didn't do that a lot.
So many young people get a bad taste in their mouth from their strict religious upbringings. Emily had the opposite experience. Church was a place that encouraged her to play, to be a kid, to be herself. So even though she didn't get a lot of empowerment at home, she was becoming empowered from within. It's incredibly fascinating to me that despite some of these traumas and dramas, you were so high performing at sports and as a class president. And, I think you're very right. You have two choices. Mm-hmm. You can say, this happened to me and have a chip on your shoulder for the rest of your life. Mm-hmm. Or you can use it to become stronger and to carve out your own identity.
Yeah.
And so that's what you did. So I think you already knew, it sounds like in high school, that you were destined for some great things.
Yeah.
And she was a magnet for good things. Emily graduated high school and began working. She took her young entrepreneurial spirit and ran with it. From getting her massage therapy degree and working in the office of a top plastic surgeon to being a nanny to 4 boys to buying her first home at 21. I'll admit it, I was floored and impressed, and I told her so. I had parents who raised me with financial aptitude and a lot of different things. I wasn't buying no house at 21 years old, girl. I just bought my first house. I'm 43. What made you understand to go out and do that with that entrepreneurial spirit?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, for me, and we all have been given so many gifts, and I have the gift of leadership on my life, but I'm not like, don't put me in a math class, okay? Like I will struggle to get by, right? Like it's just, and so I had to work really hard for attention from peers, from any, I didn't get it at home. So I wanted to do extremely well in all that I did. I also didn't get anything handed to me. So it was like, if you want a car, if you want to buy this, if you even want to buy a volleyball sweatshirt for your volleyball squad, you have to pay for it. So I learned early on work ethic. And even though we did grow up in turbulence, my mom, still to this day, just loved everybody so much. Like she has such compassion and love.
Emily leans forward in her chair towards the mic, eager to recount this warm memory about her mom.
We used to have this guy called the Schwann's man that would bring ice cream to our house. Like she would talk to him in the driveway for 45 minutes. She just was so kind and treated everyone the same. And that's who I modeled after. So I modeled after a couple of things, like her work ethic of how am I going to raise these 3 kids, put food on the table, put them through their stuff. Every day she'd have a little note card, an index card of everything she had to do during that day. And it would sit on the counter. There would be a highlighter next to it. And she would highlight off what she had to do. And even though we didn't have a lot, everything we had was very well kept. There was not a crumb on the ground. We didn't have shoes by the door. We made our bed. We had a flower garden. It was weeded. She mowed the lawn. I don't even know how the woman did all this. So I modeled, and it's not what you say, it's what your kids catch. And I caught a lot of it, by watching her and growing up so fast.
This was a beautiful moment because it's the acknowledgement that 2 things can be true. Emily did have a hard young life, and much of that was due to her mother's choices. But she can also see her mother for who she was, a young, perfectly imperfect human just trying to do her best by working hard and being fastidious in her efforts. And Emily picked up on that. So the next thing you were called to do brought you into the network marketing space. Emily was fully aware that there had been a lot of controversy around network marketing, also known as MLM or multi-level marketing, but she was open to giving it a try. The way she describes it,
Okay, so why I got into it is because I was 23, I was a nanny to 4 boys, I worked for the plastic surgeon, I had a house where I was making money on the girls renting for me, paying the mortgage even, but I still wasn't making money while I was sleeping, and I had to work an hourly wage.
At this point, Emily was competing in fitness competitions as well. I know, such an underachiever. So when a woman at her gym approached her to join her team, known in network marketing as her downline, in selling health products and supplements, she was open-minded.
So for me, it was like, oh, this makes sense. Like, people are already asking me, like, what do you do for health? And it was a great health product that I believed in. But then I looked at the business model and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so fun. Like, I don't even want to exchange for products. I want to like help people develop.
So can you explain that to people? Because I think what I've heard a lot is that network marketing is like personal development with business, with side of business.
Yeah. This is a great gateway to entrepreneurship because it usually costs anywhere from like $100 to $500 for a monthly starter pack. I could do that as a 23-year-old living paycheck to paycheck. And so what happens though is it's up to you to build it. It's based on sales and then not only what you sell, but what those under you also sell. So if you want to make small money, you sell products. If you want to make big money, you build people. Mm-hmm. And I mean, what's great about it is though, you're building community. And that's what I loved is like, this is a place where people can come in. If they just want to do this, like diaper money, so small, that's great. They could just be getting personal development that's going to get them out of a bad relationship. That's good enough for me. I don't, if this person wants to come in, make 6 figures, their mindset's going to be different. If this person just wants to learn how to close someone on a sale, great. Like everybody has their reasons. Some people are just really bored at their corporate job. So they want to just like exercise the entrepreneurial muscle. But the nice part about it is you're not building infrastructure of products, of scientists, if it's health. You don't have to deal with shipping, returns. You don't have to deal with compliance. There's like a whole company that does the dirty work. So it's a good entryway to learn the basics of sales, to get your feet wet, or even to go full time in it, which I did. I mean, I went all in and I said, okay, I want to get to the top. And I became a millionaire by the time I was 26.
That is wild. That is wild.
It's because I was like, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it.
That's right. This girl, whose family could barely afford nosebleed seats at a Minnesota Twins game, was a millionaire by age 26. And I couldn't help but feel like this hadn't surprised her in the least. Like something inside Emily gave her the confidence to know that she was destined to succeed at things, despite an upbringing that very easily could have beaten her down. So I asked her, if you had to pick like the 2 or 3 things that you really feel like contributed to your success in that space, what might they be?
I kept the main thing. A lot of people do busy work, but it doesn't actually grow the organization. And so I understood that, people are not numbers, but it is a numbers game. And so it's how many people today am I talking to and how many people in my organization are talking to people. So that's number 1. Like, I'm really good at like, what's the point? Okay, let's do it. And I trim the fat. I think there's a lot of noise and people get really busy with the noise. So that's number 1. Number 2 is I early identified who's going to actually be the aces in the deck. And then I became a king and queen maker. So I would do everything in 3s, develop someone out, like invest more time in those that wanted to hit a home run with it, which that really grew things way faster because then it allowed me to have more freedom in the end, for sure. And then, I did everything with integrity, which again, not everybody does, where I would stand in front of the room and say, this does take a lot of work. This is not for everyone. This is not a get rich quick scheme, and I would, the truth is good enough. So I wouldn't fabricate it. And I wanted to really redefine the industry in that way.
I asked Emily how gratitude played a role in her journey of professional success.
Oh my gosh, gratitude changed my absolute life. Like, when I started in network marketing, that was when I got handed my first personal development book. It was T. Harv Eker's Secrets of a Millionaire Mind. I had never read that book, anything like it. At that moment, because I burned the boats, I went all in. I had people renting my house, but I was living with a friend, actually a mentor down the street from Lori Harder. It's like we were all there together. And I had a mattress on the floor. Like, I didn't have a bed frame. I had this room and I had duffel bags of clothes. So I didn't buy any new clothes. I had an old desk. I made a vision board. And then I had like all my books that I was getting from like my mentors. They were like, give her a book, give her a book. And I remember in business, people were like going way faster than me. It seemed easier for them. I was building my influence. I mean, my friends were in college and I wasn't. I was like, who am I going to talk to? And how do you build your network? And how do you like, there wasn't Instagram and all these things. And so I just had so much defeat. And I remember a mentor of mine saying, why on earth do you think God's going to give you more if you can't be grateful for what you have right now? And it was just like a check. And I'm like, whoa. And they're like, your attitude sucks. Like, straight up. Like, you have a defeated mindset and you're putting yourself there. So what I want you to do before you go to bed every night is take a notebook and write 10 things you're grateful for every single day. And that's what I started to do. I remember it vividly. Like, I can feel the mattress on the floor as I say this. And I can feel the pillow and I can feel the sheets. And I would write out, I'm grateful for my pillow. I'm grateful for this bed. I'm grateful for an opportunity. I'm grateful that, I have this person in my life that's speaking in. Like, I just started practicing gratitude and it raised my frequency when I did that. And so I'd wake up and do that. I'm grateful for this. And it's like, those were some of the happiest moments in my life because it was like a shift for me. And I stopped blaming other people for what I didn't have or complaining or justifying or all the things. And I just started to take ownership. But that's when I learned gratitude.
I often talk about gratitude as the broom that sweeps away the cobwebs that are in the way of reaching who you want to become. The energy you put out is either attracting things to you or you're putting out bad energy and the magnet is turned the wrong way and you're literally repelling your dream life. So what strikes me about Emily is that despite her early environment, she's always worked hard to maintain a high vibrational frequency, meaning embodying and putting out good energy. And because of this, she attracts things to her at a level that even she can't comprehend sometimes. So you talk about vibrating at a higher frequency in general. And I'm wondering, for somebody who just really has a hard time getting in touch with that, how do you suggest they do that? Like, you've given us a few tips.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, do you have a daily practice to keep the vibes high?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Einstein says everything in your life is a result of the vibration or frequency that you're on. And, if you think of like there's a chart, a frequency chart, and it shows like the upward spiral, and on the top, the highest frequency is love, gratitude, joy, appreciation. And then the low is like anger, shame, resentment. When you start to get bored, that's the middle of the line. So you can either go upwards or downwards. And so all day long, I build my life to go upwards. So that might be, it's in the small things. It's in my home and how it's even designed, like no clutter, everything has its place, there's divine order. And I recently moved, and I was just telling my partner Brittany, I was saying, I gotta get it in order because like it's low frequency. Why is it low frequency? Because I couldn't find my earrings this morning, and that creates chaos, which creates low frequency. So organization your email inbox, your computer, your office, I don't want chaos in any way, shape, or form. My practices for raising my frequency, the gratitude thing, absolute major. And not just in the morning routine. And I actually need it more at like 3 o'clock. Right?
The witching hour.
I actually need it more when I get a weird email, right? And so I'm also big on the WPP. So I'm going to, for me, it's the living word. So I read the Bible, I take word from the Bible, and I let it minister to my heart to raise my frequency. Because a lot of times, we get filled with all this negativity in our brain. And if you read the Bible, it contradicts what the Bible says all the time. So, I'm not good enough. Well, it says you are good enough in the Bible. So for me, that ministers to me. Prayer, I ask for help. I ask even for what's happening in my life here today as we record this. I've been praying every single day, God, please send me earthly angels, people that can help me with my God-given mission, because I am not an integrator. I'm a visionary. I need help. Send me the right people. I'm asking constantly, right? I do that every day. I ask for wisdom. I ask even for this show. I ask, tell me the right thing to say. Just speak through me, to me. I'm always asking, raising my frequency, okay? And then praise, which is a form of gratitude through music. So it's like dancing around, praise, it just raises your frequency. And so the WPP, I do that every day. And then I have a rebounder that throughout the day, Jake and I will fight over it sometimes, but we jump.
So like a trampoline.
Yes,
Yeah.
a mini trampoline. We eat prana-like food, rich like food, raised, high vibrating food. That's why I'm so grateful for the gifts you gave me from your sponsors, because it's what I'm in alignment with, of high ingredient, high integrity food, right? So there's so many things I do that build this high frequency life. And then I'd say the last thing is just, it's the environment of even the friends, the people that I have. If they're low frequency, constantly nagging, if they are gossiping, that is such a dark spirit. Gossip is I don't want to be around it, because it's going to lower all of our frequency. Yeah. So it sounds so simple, and it can be, but does take discipline. But when you live high frequency, I know you can agree to this,
Yeah.
there's nothing like it.
This is the embodiment of having the magnet turn the right way. So here she was, attracting her dream life on the outside by staying diligent with the work on the inside. As her internal value of herself grew, so did her external value in the marketplace. Quite simply, Emily was in high demand. Determined to spread her message of faith and frequency wider and with even greater impact, Emily began getting asked to speak on some of the biggest stages in the world.
Positive expectation. God will meet you at your level of expectation every time. What do you expect?
She shared simply and intentionally the things that had worked for her to get to where she was, and audiences loved it.
Meditate. Prayer, you're asking. Meditation, you're receiving. This matters. I spend more time getting myself right so I can be a bigger, better person for everybody else in my life.
So here was this girl, this rising star, beautiful, successful, and single. Here's Emily about this time.
Oh my gosh. So I was in my single season in LA, and I was healing through a breakup, divorce, and I had only ever been with one person my whole life. And it was, it was a lot, like any breakup is. And I was like, okay, I'm going to be in this single season. I'm just going to get better. I'm going to heal. I'm going to go to my place of worship. I'm going to work out. And even my girlfriend, she was a realtor. I'm like, okay, if it's not like our faith and we're not working on our body and in our empires, we don't want anything to do with it. And then suddenly I'm like, okay, I think I should start going on dates. She's like, what happened? I'm like, girl, like, I mean, like, come on, right? I'm in my prime. And so anyways, so I start dating and I'm like, oh my God, I would go on dates and I'm like, can I just leave? Like, I would know in the first like 5 seconds. I'm like, no, this is going to be an appetizer kind of thing. Like, I need to leave, you know, like, I don't want projects. And so I got to this point where I was like, I don't care how much money you have. I don't care what it was just this whole exhausting thing. And I'm like, I'm trying too hard. It felt so forced. Me and my girlfriend would be like, all right, let's go to this bar tonight. We'll just like sit there and like see who we see. And I'm like, nothing is flowing. Everything is so forced right now. I'm like, I'm done, right? Like, I just need to call him in. I just need to pray him in. And so one of my mentors, who's like in his 50s, he called me, and I'm on my gratitude walk in the morning in Santa Monica. And he's like, here's what you need to do. You need to make a list of everything you want in a man. And he goes, I know it's going to be long. So just go to the top 5, circle them, and those are your non-negotiables. And I was like, got it. Okay, let's go. January 1st, I drive to Malibu. I take my little dog. We're at the beach. Sun is shining. Gratitude. It's a new year. It's a new day. I write out my list. Number 1, loves God. Number 2, can lead me, is a leader, parentheses, doesn't take my BS. Because the thing is, I always trumped a lot of men in my life. I needed a strong, stable, masculine man. Anyways, I write out this list. 1 month later, I'm busy. It's before COVID, before the world shut down. I'm in Tampa speaking at an event and then doing an NBC piece. Got to fly back. My business partner rings me and he's like, hey, I got this new guy that's going to sell our supplements. I don't know how good he's going to do, but he's a pretty big business guy. He's a business consultant. He's speaking in Burbank with like one of the Shark Tank guys. Can you go drop off products? And I was like, yo, I'm in Tampa. Like, no, I'm busy. And he's like, well, let me put you on a FaceTime and at least like welcome him to the business. I want him to meet like the higher ups. I was like, fine, I'll do a FaceTime. I'll pull in a favor. So I do a FaceTime and it's my now fiance, Jake. And there was just like, hi. And I'm not like this. I mean, I roll with the bros, you know, I'm usually pretty cordial, like it just straight face, straight laced. You have to be. And I was just like, oh, I just was curious, but there wasn't even like, oh, I like him. I was just curious. So I welcomed him to the team and I was like, okay, my plane lands, I'll run home to Santa Monica, I'll get dressed quick, I'll go to Burbank, I'll drop off the products, but I'm only dropping off the products. So, you know, you're going from East Coast, West Coast, hot mess, express, all the things. And he's getting ready to speak. So I walk into this entrepreneur event and there's like men everywhere. It's just like a bro fest. And they all had their booths. And there was just like people networking and it was crazy. And I walk in with like my protein bars and my protein. And I'm just trying to drop this stuff off and get out. But he comes down because he was getting ready to speak. I had no idea. They changed his speaking time. He comes down and he's in peak state. You know how you get into before you speak? He's fully charged. And he's like, hi, Emily. And it was because he like didn't give me loads of attention. And I wasn't like the star of the show, but he was. It was almost like refreshing. Do you know what I mean?
I do know what you mean.
And so he's like, I'm about to go in. I got to head backstage. I'd love to have you just step in for a little bit and just listen. And it was almost like he didn't even give me a chance to say no. So he goes backstage. His assistant looks at me. He has this big booth with like his face on the side of the booth. So tacky. I make fun of him now. I was like, well, fine. I'll listen to him talk. So I'm in this room and he goes on stage.
We would be in a deep down depression if we only bought things we needed. True or not true? So the first thing
you got to remember, I'm usually the speaker. And I'm like, oh my gosh, he's smart. Oh, and he's caring and he has a huge heart. He's like, he embodies the best of both sides. But it still didn't register to me like I kind of like him. So he gets done speaking and like his family and everyone's there. And he's like, why don't you just like stay for the dinner? And I'm like, I haven't even been home. Like I just got, yes, I'll stay. So I just stay. And I watched how he interacted with everybody, his clients, his mom, his aunt, his grandpa. And I watched and I'm like, oh my gosh, he is so sweet. It still didn't register. So I'm like, I gotta go. So he walks me to my truck and he tried to hug me. And I'm used to giving all the men like a side hug. This is what I do. And he's like, you wouldn't like actually hug. He's like, you are so guarded. And I was like, I had to be. Sure. And he's like, listen, I know this is fast, but in 2 days I have a gala. I have a table. Demi Moore's hosting. I've got the #1 plastic surgeon in the world going to be there. I've got a friend who created the security tags for clothing. He like stacked it. He's like, I got Tony Robbins' #1 speaker that's going to be there. You need to be there. Can you get a gown and can you come? And I'm like, yes. And I'm thinking, how am I going to get a gown?
Right.
So I drive home and I'm just like, there was something that felt so different. It was so platonic, but I was like trying to like register all of it.
Emily got home and got to work on finding the gown. She ultimately settled on one in velvet.
And then it had huge pearls around the neck.
So pretty.
Yeah.
And headed to the gala.
And I felt like Cinderella. I felt like I was 16 years old going to the prom. And we sat next to each other. And he is like so cordial, not even trying to like date me. But I felt his like leg brush up against mine. And it was like electricity in our connection. And so we just like fell in love. I know that sounds crazy. It's
oh my God, I love this story.
But it just
keep telling it forever.
But we would just talk and talk and talk and talk for hours. And I felt like we're so aligned. Like he is so driven to serve. He's so driven to get himself better, to better the world. He's so mindful. He's like, I just couldn't even believe he existed.
I asked Emily a question that had been tumbling around my mind as she told this love story. Do you think it was because you were always large and in charge and you had to be like the shot caller? And it sounds like he stepped in this very non-domineering, but it sounds like he was like, listen, and you were able to step back into your feminine energy?
I was craving that and I didn't even know it. I was so exhausted from being in charge all the time. And he was like, put on a dress, the driver will be there at 7. And I'm like, and almost a part of me was like, I'm not in control. And I was like, but this is what and I just was like, I felt like my shoulders just literally go like this. And I was like, oh my gosh, he's not controlling, but he's assertive. And it's like I can fall back and he's got me. And I didn't know that I was like this feminine, soft gal until I met him. Like people are like, you've grown so much. I'm like, a part of it is because I'm calmer, because I'm not so much in my masculine.
Yeah. Not trying to prove. Yeah. I think what an amazing lesson in gratitude once again, right? Just to be grateful of this life lesson that you did not see coming, right? And it changed your entire ethos of being.
My entire ethos of being. You're really like making me realize that, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So much like how I think I'm honestly able to do a lot of the work I'm doing now because he has like held that space for me and encouraged it.
And the work Emily is doing now is the embodiment of all that she is, all that she was, and all that she teaches, coming together in one fabulous package. You see, when we look back on Emily's life, we can see it all so clearly. She never had an expensive, fancy education. She didn't have a trust fund. She never had family connections to network her way into a cushy summer internship. No, what Emily had was simply it. And people wanted to learn how to get it too. Although if you ask Emily, we all already have it. Emily explains the launch of her proprietary brand, The It Factor, which is the name behind her hit podcast, as well as her speaking, coaching, and consulting program.
What I had found is that I coach thousands of people, and they are all trying to be somebody they're not. It's this thing we get into, and it lowers their frequency, and it like drives me crazy. It breaks my heart. Or somebody will be operating in their spiritual gifting, maybe as a creative, maybe they're like in the digital space, but they feel like their work doesn't matter because they're not on stage like me or making some X amount of dollars. But it really just royally pissed me off. And I'm like, we have to break this down to the most elementary basics. The fundamental truths is we're all uniquely and wonderfully created, down to a cellular level. I will never be you, you'll never be me. That's why when women are in competition, I'm like, there is no competition. We're so different because we're created different. And so I started to look at all this, and I also looked at the generations coming up and the TikTok society and the Instagram society. And I'm like, this is what is causing people to be depressed and dark, and they're just not realizing who they are. And I want to make this cool. And so that's how the It Factor was born. Why I did it is because when I would be in like business settings, they would teach like charisma cues and, here's how to have your X factor, and you need to be XYZ way. You need to do this. You need to wear this. You need to sound. And I'm like, no, because if you try to make Timmy do that and he's not that, he is going to A, feel uncomfortable, B, lower his frequency. He's going to be a complete fake. He's not going to be walking in what's called full congruence. And so I kept being in like these sales settings where that was like the message. That's how you close someone. That's how you master manipulate without them saying that. But that's really, and that made me so mad. And I'm like, no, it's not the X factor. It's you are already it. You already have everything inside of you. You just have to access it, identify it, amplify it, which seems so elementary, and it is, but yet we don't do that.
100%. So how do people access it? I mean, we know that everybody is already it. Everybody has God-given gifts, but I think for some people it might be hard to uncover.
Yeah, you go through this process, this process of getting a notebook out and saying, what makes me truly unique? Like, think about it. Is it your laugh? Is it your style? Is it like, are you somebody who, like we were talking about your stage presence, how you're wearing like cute tennies?
Emily's referencing a conversation we had had before we began recording here, where I had told her that I decided when I'm speaking on stage to stop wearing high heels because I felt like I was trying too hard, playing dress up instead of being grounded in the shoes that made me feel comfortable, playful, powerful, and strong. So I made my decision. Cute tennies all day, every day for the win. And it makes sense. This is exactly what she's talking about. Not trying to pretend to be someone different, but working hard to discover what already makes you great and leaning into it.
It's like you're like, I feel so much more than like myself. I never wanted to be running around in these high heels on stage, like, because you do have that vibe to you, right? Like to the style level of what you wear, what you like, what you enjoy, but even your gifting. I take them through like a process of your unique gifting, okay? But then also what you're into. Like what sparks joy? What makes you like jazzed? For me, it's like I could stare at a Vogue magazine. I just could. I just love it. I'm like, I could just look at it all day. I could go to a museum and just look at it. It sparks joy. So we go through this process and then we say, what do we need to amplify more of that we've been hiding? And it's wild. I'll work with people on brands where they're like, wow, I totally like hid that side of myself, or they didn't know how to package it. And they've been speaking a certain way because maybe they were in a corporate setting that like made them speak that way. And they've just been like putting themselves in a little box. And so we just start to like basically like look at what's in Mr. Potato Head and bring it out.
I mean, do you find that people, because I think a lot of the times when I talk about overcoming imposter syndrome, I think that people have these 3 like inner imposters, and I kind of walk people through that. The third one is, I call it the judger. And the interesting thing about the judger is this part of your imposter syndrome actually believes you can do the hard thing, but they're scared that you're going to be judged when you succeed. And it often comes up when you have to do something cringy, like self-promote or something that makes you feel uncomfortable. So I'm wondering, do you find a lot of people, especially women, are scared to step into who they authentically want to be because they're scared of getting judged?
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, but if they're scared of getting judged, they're probably judging a lot themselves. That's what I find, is that like life's a boomerang, and what you put out, you get back.
Yeah.
So that's a heart thing.
That's a hard thing.
And so I say, let's examine your heart. And I tie it back to when I started in business. I would compare myself. I mean, I competed in Fitness America, where you're literally competing against other people's bodies. That's where like doing the morning routine and doing like searching your heart and unveiling, like, do you have a spirit of perfection? Do you have a spirit of jealousy? Because I just find so much, like, if you're afraid of being judged, you probably are judging other people. And it's probably not coming from like ill, like you don't even realize you're doing it. But as a society, that's what we've been taught to do. And so instead of judging, like, my thing is, and I'm so into style and aesthetics and all that, but I can appreciate somebody else who's so different than me. They dress different, they talk different, they have a whole different brand. When I see like that creativity, I feel like that's heaven in motion. When I see a human that's walking in their divine assignment, which you are, you're so in flow, you so are in flow. To me, it's like heaven in motion. It really is. And it's like, that's how I know my heart's in a good spot. If I feel ugly though, I'll look at someone like you and go, her podcast is better than mine. She has a way better idea. She has this, she has that. She's been on a million other stages. That my heart is not in a good spot. And that's when I need to go back and like do some work on myself if I feel that way.
And this, my friends, is a beautiful reminder. Emily is one of the most beautiful women I've ever met. One of the more successful too. And she has days where she looks around and feels, in her own words, ugly or less than, which to the outside world just seems insane. But it proves that every single person on this planet has days where they lack confidence, where that imposter syndrome is in the driver's seat, where gratitude's in the back, or maybe it forgot to even get in the car at all. This is what Emily wants people to know. To look at her today, you may see perfection and think, I could never get there. But the reality is, we all wake up in the morning with the same 2 choices. Approach the day as a victim or as a victor. And this is why she takes her role on big stages so seriously.
I take it so seriously. Truly. It's such a privilege to be in front of people, and it's their time. And I really take it so seriously. And for me, it is a whole process, because it's not just like a talk. I'm not just like, oh, I just want to get this point across. For me, it's not good enough unless a life is changed. And my whole thing is transformation. Like, I want them to have some kind of transformation. And so it starts the day before. I mean, I start praying over the message. I need to know what kind of people are going to be in that room, going to bed, like the whole thing, like just praying over it. And then that day, depending on what time I speak, I'm usually really quiet because, again, I'm just like kind of going through it. And for me, I don't memorize. I just have key points, and then I just let my spirit flow depending on what I feel in the room. So I don't recommend that for everyone, but I feel like I have a trust, and so I flow through it. But basically, I go backstage, and I don't like people to talk to me. I don't like, I'm that person where it's like I don't want to know where we're going for dinner. I don't care. I cannot check my phone. I don't even want to see my phone. And I am feeling the energy from what's happening out there backstage. So I'm quiet. I have worship music on, and I'm just talking to God, and he's telling me what I need to do when I'm out there. And it's usually subconscious. It's not like, Emily, let's do this. It's just all coming through my subconscious. And so I'm in a state. I'm in peak state. My heart has to be ready to connect with them. And so it's a completely different process. I think it sounds extreme, but it's because it's not, I'm just like the messenger. That's it. And so again, I'm just listening to what do I need to say? Who needs to, I might say something I never said before, but it was for that person in the front row. Like, I don't know. And so, I get jacked up, and sometimes I do push-ups. I just make sure I'm in a peak state for sure. And then, go do the dang thing.
And she does the dang thing, all right. And not just on giant stages, but human to human, heart to heart as well. I had recently seen a picture of Emily that I had to ask her about. You have a servant's heart. I saw a picture of you on your Instagram where you were holding hands and praying with a woman. Can you just end by tell me what that picture was and what that meant to you?
We were at a book signing for LA Style magazine, and she was just like sharing with me that she's stepping out and transitioning careers. And she was so scared, and I could feel a weight of heaviness over her. And I just wanted to pray for her and give her peace, because I just knew that she's going to transition and step more into her assignment instead of an occupation. And it's like, it's available to all of us. And it's just like, I really wanted to just give her peace and understanding. And so I just prayed for her in the middle of Barnes and Noble, but that's what we could do. It's so great.
Emily is a joy to be around. Her life is overflowing because she's fought tooth and nail to open up the path in front of her to allow for the greatness to come. And she freely shares it with others, which makes for an inspiration boomerang. Probably my favorite thing about sitting with Emily was hearing her vulnerability, her honest truth and candor about the way that she still struggles with the stuff the rest of us struggle with too. She fights the daily battles against those inner demons, those moments of weakness or self-pity. But the point is, she comes out swinging against them instead of backing down and letting them wash over her.
Even when when I have the funky monkeys right now, like there's so much going on, I have to be careful of my tongue, of the words that I say, and I catch myself. And my fiance, Jake, was saying this. He's like, be careful. Like, you prayed for these things. You prayed to eat like this. Watch yourself. And I just switch it to, I get to put away these boxes in my new home. I get avalanches of abundance are flowing. And it's like automatically, it's like a joy comes back.
Yes, you heard right. At the time of this recording, Jake had become her fiance. And at the time of airing, he's her husband. Because she attracted him and so much more into her world through gratitude, attitude, and that elusive it factor that, by the way, you have too. If you'd like to learn more about Emily, she's online at meetemilyford.com. That's all for today. Remember, if you like what you heard, if it impacted you in any way, and if you think it's a message other people in your life might like to hear, I'd be so grateful if you'd give me 5 stars, leave a quick little comment. Those things really help. And share this podcast with your friends, either on social media or just word of mouth. I'm on a mission for us all to help each other focus on expanding our attention towards what's good in the world rather than focusing on what's bad, one person at a time. If we all did that, even to our own little sphere of influence, the world has the potential to be a much more radically awesome place. Stick with me, friends. I've got your back. We're in this together, and it's a great day to see the greatness in the day. See you next time. The Gratitudeology podcast is written, executive produced, and hosted by me, Jamie Hess. Sound design and studio production by Gotham Production Studios. Our theme song is Maze by Hills, sung by Nadia Ali. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Gratitudeology.
Will you walk through the fire? Would you ride through the storm? Will you walk on a wire? Will you save me if I fall? Will you break through the madness? Set us down where we're safe. I'll be right here waiting till you find